Good afternoon. The Public Safety Committee will now come to order. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Alderman Oldenburg.
Present.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Here. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Velazquez.
Present.
Alderwoman Sunier. Vice Chair Aldridge. Chair Narayan.
Here.
Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Sunier. We have 5 present. We have a quorum.
All right, thank you. With that, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of Thursday, April 25th, 2024.
I move that we approve the minutes from Thursday, April 25th, 2024.
Second.
Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Alderman Oldenburg.
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Velazquez.
Aye.
Alderwoman Sunier. Vice Chair Aldridge.
Aye.
Chair Narayan.
Aye.
Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Sunier. We have 5 aye votes.
With that, we have sustained the motion and approved the minutes. We're going to go just slightly out of order here today. I'm going to just have a brief discussion on the oversight board so that we can try and get folks out of here sooner rather than later. There was an error in noticing the meeting, and it was not noticed with public comment. That is necessary in order to fall in line with the underlying ordinance. So we cannot vote you out today. So what I want to do for just a brief moment is address what I think several committee members will be looking for when we come back in terms of the questions that you'll likely hear from us. I think that the vast majority of them will be around your ability to neutrally look at a situation without any preconceived notion. A lot of people who are interested in this particular board, one of the things that we really tried to vet for was the idea that some people who are interested in it already come to the table with their own preconceived notions of what should happen, what the outcomes of these type of investigations that you'll be engaged in should be. I'm sure that we've all heard from people, we all know people who feel that the police can do no wrong, no matter what the situation is. And I know that we've all heard from people who think that, every cop is bad, that the whole institution is corrupt, that one bad actor, spoils the entire department. People have wanted to defund the police. People have wanted to abolish the police department. And so I think a lot of the questions that you'll be hearing from us will be coming from your personal experience there and how you see yourself engaging with this board and whether or not you're going to be able to come to fair and impartial conclusions based on the evidence presented to you in any given specific instance. Do any of you have any questions for us about what that process might look like? Anyone in the room or online? If you're online, please just raise your hand. Yes, sir. So it would likely be, let's see. We're likely looking at the 13th at 2 p.m.
I got a question.
Sure, go ahead, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know there was an error in not making it public. Could you explain why it can't be, the appointees or appointments can't be voted today? I wasn't aware of that.
Sure, sure. So, per the ordinance, the hearing that we cannot vote to install people onto this committee without taking public hearing on the nominees themselves. So, we essentially we could have a hearing today on this, but no one could get voted out. And I think it makes more sense to have the public hearing at the same time as people are able to hear from the nominees.
So you're saying we're not taking public comment on the, I know it wasn't scheduled up, but we're not, I know it's also in our rules that that we can't have public, so we're not taking public comment?
So we're not taking public comment today on this because it was not noticed appropriately for public comment. Because there may be people who want to have their voice heard on any of these potential nominees that would not have come here today because the meeting notice specifically said no public comment will be taken. And so that puts, we risk falling away from where we need to be to comply with that ordinance. So the last thing that I want to have happen is to get folks onto this committee and then have some underlying flaw with how they got there that's going to be challenged in court.
Understood. And somehow there was notice up for public comment for Board Bill 29, Oldenburg's bill, but not DFOB and COB members.
That's correct. And that was not, I can't explain why that happened. This meeting had been set on last Friday with the specific intent of taking public comment on these nominees, and just the way that the notice went out was no public comment will be taken. If anyone wants to pull the game footage, it was during announcements, Friday Board of Aldermen meeting. So there's no funny business there. This is just a clerical error.
I appreciate it. And I will say for the record, the chairman has always been an advocate. You've been an advocate for make sure we have public comment. It is a little unfortunate that I know we have residents that are here, one from our ward that expected to know maybe a decision. They've applied, they went through the process, they work with Michael at the mayor's office. They're here in person expecting something, and we're saying now we'll wait to 2 weeks to potentially approve them or not, which is just a little unfortunate.
I agree. Does anyone have anything further on COB? Alderwoman Saunier, Alderman Oldenburg.
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead.
This probably is more for you as a chair, and it might have been floated already. Is it possible that even if we don't take a vote, you can still hear from the people that are present here today?
I think that we risk just having a kind of a fundamental flaw there, because if we hear from people and we've already said we're not taking public comment today, there may be people who want to have their public comment heard. And so I don't want to exclude anyone. I'd rather start with a clean slate and make sure it's done correctly, particularly because this board very well may be challenged legally. And so we want to make sure that everything, all the nuts and bolts are correct up front to make sure that there's not a strong argument for a legal challenge from the get-go. I don't want to risk fatally flawing the work of this board before they even get started.
I just, I think that if we're saying we're not going to take a vote and we're still going to make sure we have public comment on the next meeting, that means that anybody else who wants to come will still have the opportunity to come at the next meeting, but we could still kind of give give something to the people who are here today by letting them give comments. I know, like, obviously this is a different committee, but on other committees I'm on, we've done that before where we say, hey, something happened, so we're not going to be taking a vote today, but out of respect for people who show up, just respectfully, I know for HUDs, because that's the committee I vice chair, we always allow people when they come to talk. And if we say we're not going to take comment, if we say we're not going to take a vote, we won't take a vote. Or a lot of times with that committee, sponsors change their mind if they want to vote or not. But I would just say my preference, and of course it's your chair, your choice, so chair, would be to say, hey, we're not going to take a vote, but we're going to, give people who have taken their time to come here and show up today could get a chance to say what they want for the record. And then next time we will make sure that it's noticed and allow anyone else who wants to come to give comment.
Thank you for that, Alderwoman. And, 9 times out of 10, I would agree with you. I would say, hey, this is just a clerical issue. But given the very real fact that I think that this could be headed towards litigation in general, I just want to make sure that things are done correctly up front. I don't want to give any, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard and I worked on this for several years, and I want to make sure that we're not tripping over our own feet on the 1-yard line here. And I think that we would risk doing so by opening it up like that when we have noted no public comment will be taken on this agenda item. I very much share your frustration here. This was not by design. I am not sure why it was noticed that way. That was not the way that it was announced, but that's what we have in front of us, and that's the public notice. And I think that equally important as it is to hear anyone who wants to speak, when you've told some people that they're not welcome to come speak, then to hear from others is also problematic, and I want to avoid that. I will say that I'm happy to stay after the meeting and listen to anyone about anything who came down here, as I always am after these meetings. I just want to, during our official deliberations here, make sure that we're playing everything exactly by the book on this particular topic. So does anyone have anything further? And if anyone has any questions about that or concerns or anything, I imagine that we'll move through our next agenda item fairly quickly. And like I said, I'll certainly be happy to remain after the meeting to discuss this with anyone who has any concerns. Sorry, everyone. And yes, I apologize to everyone that took time out of their day to come down here. I know that that's frustrating, and I share your frustration. My hope was to vote these nominees out today and get this board up and running. We've been working on this as a board for many years, and it's frustrating that right as we're at the finish line to pump the brakes like this, but we do have a date certain that we will be back to hear it. Like I said, on the 13th, 2 p.m. Be here bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and we will take testimony and hopefully have a vote to put folks onto this board and get folks up and running. Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so I did want to just lift up, there is the state statute that's relevant to our public meeting, says that all public governmental bodies shall give notice of the time, date, and place of each meeting and its tentative agenda in a matter reasonably calculated to advise the public of the matters to be considered, and if the meeting will be conducted by telephone or other electronic means. The notice of the meeting shall identify the mode by which the meeting will be conducted and the designated location where the public may observe and attend the meeting. So I don't see anything in that that limits that, but of course,
I think you need to look to the ordinance itself, the ordinance. I'm going off what legal counsel and the mayor's office has indicated on this, as well as our council.
And I would say maybe just for future reference, it's something for you as chair and the vice chair to talk about, maybe adding to our agendas to say, maybe a chair at any moment can decide to take public comment or not, like maybe discussing how we can avoid being in this situation in the future with our agendas.
Certainly, and typically typically, the default for our meetings is that public comment is, that's in our rules. So the fact that it says no public comment will be taken is abnormal. That's why I think we need to pause here, because that means that there was not a conscious decision, but someone took an action to say, we are not taking public comment. Every other committee meeting that we have, every board bill, every resolution, the default is to have public comment, but the way that the clerk sent out notice on this was that no public comment will be taken, and I want to make sure that we are not running afoul of anything there. We've worked too hard to get to this point to fumble the ball at the 1 yard line. So with that, thank you all for coming out today. I apologize that you wasted your time to hear us bicker about the finer points of public notice. But I hope that everyone can make it on the 13th at 2 p.m. And we will be hearing from folks then. We will have questions for you. And like I said, I will be around after the meeting to discuss any concerns or questions that anyone may have. And I imagine that we only have one other thing on the agenda, so I imagine it won't be long that anyone will be here should they want to take me up on that offer. So again, apologies. Thank you for coming out, and we hope to see you on the 13th. And with that, we're going to move to item number 1, which is Board Bill number 29.
Good afternoon. Mr. Chairman, if it's all right, just want to make sure that Board Bill 29 is in front of the committee so we can take action on it.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Simply, Board Bill 29 has been a request of the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department in concert with the Personnel Division here at the City of St. Louis. And this board bill pertains to fingerprinting-based background check requirements as a condition for employment or contracts, as well as anyone seeking a license, a security license, private security officer, courier, or other defined in Section 2 of the bill. So again, Board Bill 29 is actually needed to remain in compliance with a recently changed state law. So we're hoping to pass this because it'll allow our continued access to various databases for criminal background checks and other proceedings along those lines. Section 1, again, just lists the intent of the legislation. Those defined terms I referenced earlier are in Section 2. They are very limited to watchman, courier, private security officer, licensee, intern, got to watch out for those interns, and contractor or contractors. Section 3 of the bill lays out who needs specifically to be fingerprinted, and it refers back to those defined positions that are affected. And then there are fitness determinations, whether someone is in compliance or not. Typically, the check would be if the crime bears on the capacity of serving, whether there's a felony, a misdemeanor which involved a threat of force or threat of force, theft, controlled substance, or sex-related offenses. And then Section 6 sort of wraps it up that administratively this is going to be handled by both the Department of Personnel and the Police Division. So again, at the request of the city's Personnel Division, the city's Operations Division, and the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department, just to keep the wheels of government moving so that we can remain in compliance with a altered or modified state law. I will certainly take any questions from the committee, Mr. Chairman.
So this is something that you worked with SLMPD and their council or our council or something on?
Yep, absolutely. And I thought someone might, oh, there she is. If there's any sort of hyper-technical legal questions, no?
The fact that someone's here saying that they worked on it's good
Yes.
enough for me. I just want to
Perfect.
make sure that that you didn't just dream this up.
Yeah, any hyper-technical legal questions I will make up, so refer those to me.
All right. Well, I don't have any questions. Let's see here. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, do you have any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Alderwoman Velasquez, any questions?
Thank you. Just a quick question for you, Alderman Oldenburg. This is all interns who are working in the city, not just interns who may be working for the police department or in the Division of Public Safety?
Correct. I believe that the term, let me go to the correct section here, but yes, I believe it is all interns. And how that's defined is a student or trainee who works sometimes without pay for the city of St. Louis in order to experience, is how we're defining that.
And that is part of state law, that requirement for interns?
Correct.
Okay, I have no other questions. Thank you.
Vice Chair Aldridge. All right. It is kind of interesting that we would want interns to go.
I
This process,
also,
but
that's
not-
why I sort of made a tongue-in-cheek joke to why we got to watch out for those interns, but we all can't begin to get inside the head of state lawmakers.
Sure. Like the Vice Chair does have a question after all.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Going back to the interns, for just intern, I guess what was the spirit behind this? Is this a issue that I guess the chief is running into with interns and making sure that they're fingerprinted, or what is? Just trying to get the idea of what's the spirit behind
Have
this.
the answer to that, Alderman. I apologize. I think it's defined as it's defined, and I think it's a defined position that's derived from the state law change. So I can't speak to the intent.
Is state law change?
Yeah, so that interns is one of the defined positions, so that you can remain, so that we can remain having access to the criminal background checks and the other databases that is involved in police work.
Okay. Historically, usually interns could be probably like age 16, maybe 17, never been fingerprinted, no background check. So this would be their first entrance into like some type of fingerprint in the system if they are interning, I guess, within the department.
I'm not sure if that age is reflective here of how we're defining an intern, other than what the defined term here is. It comes from state law, so I really can't answer that.
Okay. And this was something the department brought to you, or you just?
Yeah, both the Department of Personnel and the Police Department.
Thank you.
And again, just one more question for you, Alderman.
Sure.
So this bill is just essentially to get us into compliance with state law so that we can access the databases.
Continue to access it, you bet.
Okay. One last one. Oh, we got one more from the Vice Chair.
And I think Alderwoman Sonia was out. She may have a question. Do you have, so is this done in this past General Assembly, or what's the state statute that is updating it so we're in line with state law? Is this a new law that was just passed that may, if it was just done this past session, it's not signed by the governor yet? Is this old state law? Is this new state law?
It was a recent changed state law.
So this last session?
I couldn't speak to what session it was or if there was a grace period. I just know that I was told it was a recent change in state law.
Okay.
So I'm sure it was part of a larger omnibus package of laws, as you're familiar with.
Yeah. It'd be good to know that before we get to the floor, because if we end up passing it as not, I mean, I guess we could do it locally, but if it's not state law and then state law change, we wouldn't be like in compliance of that. So that's why I was curious of when you keep saying it's state law. So I'm, as we,
Recent change is what I was told in state law, and this.
I understand and love the recent. I just would love to know, like, as we legislation and our homework on it, when was the state law passed? Like, state law just passed legislation around COB and DFOB, but we have to, wait to see. And that was this session, if it's going to be signed by the governor. So just want to be aware of like when the
When the change took place?
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, I'm amenable to finding that out, and I hope my word's still good here in front of this committee, being a member, that, you know, I won't certainly move it forward on the floor for final passage until we get that answered for you, as well as more color and background around intern as well, because those were some questions. But I do hope that the committee can give favorable consideration to keep the wheels of government moving here. And I'm happy to put it on the informal calendar for more clarification, but this is a pretty routine compliance law from what I understand. But I don't want to disregard the questions, and I do want to get those in.
Thank you, Alderman.
You bet.
Alderwoman Saunier, you were out of the room. Do you have any questions for the sponsor?
Yes. First of all, I want to make sure I acknowledge your work on this bill, because I know when we work with departments, it's a challenge. So I'm glad you did the work. I think for me, I would like to hear from someone in the police department or hear from the director before I would feel comfortable taking a vote on this, or at least voting in the affirmative on it. I would love to either, get an email from someone or have them come in and talk to us as a committee so that we can ask some questions of them, because I know that they had to be very involved in this process. And I know for a lot of other bills.
There is a representative from
Okay.
SLMPD here. Come on up.
And if you could, please state your name for the record.
Sure. I'm Sergeant Trish Nykamp. I'm over prisoner processing, but I'm representing Lieutenant Vanna Rushing, who's over the security section of the police department that's responsible for licensing.
Okay, and do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is true to the best of your ability?
I do.
All right.
Thank you for being here today. So Section 4 mentions a positive or negative fitness determination that's based on the criminal legal history. Is this the only base that someone's fitness is determined under this legislation, or are there other fitnesses that are considered?
There are other fitnesses that are being considered. This is just the background check to be able to check the national database. My understanding is the FBI found that we weren't in compliance, and they then contacted Missouri Highway Patrol, who then sent the letter to our security section, gave us language that was approved through our legal department, and is now this bill.
Thank you.
The vice chair has an additional question, I believe.
I'm just going to keep hammering on this state law. So you say FBI said we wasn't in compliance. Were we not in compliance with state law, or was we not in compliance with FBI regulations?
I don't know the original background. I'd have to talk to legal to get that for you.
Okay, we're just some way not in compliance with the fingerprinting process, if I'm...
There was some language that was deficient, that they were going to cut us off from the access to those databases. I don't know what that law was, and I don't know when that happened.
Gotcha. And I also appreciate you being here and all your service to public safety. I just want to get some clarity, and like Alderman from the 7th Ward, before voting on something, usually we have public safety, they're very clear on what the problem is, and how do we get to the solution, or what the hurdles may be. So I was just curious of what the compliance is. That, again, because we just mentioned in this testimony that we weren't, it's something that state law changed, and now it says we're not in compliance with FBI. So I'm trying to figure out, is it federal or is it state that we're not in compliance in, or what is the lack of understanding on my end? That's what I'm just trying to get a better understanding.
And I'll definitely get all that information.
It sounds like what you want on it. I mean, to me, does it matter whether it's state or federal that we're out of compliance with? I mean, if the FBI says you're out of compliance for XYZ and this ordinance fixes it, I'm not sure why their trepidation.
Just a better understanding, Alderman. I know we haven't talked about this legislation till you just brought it forward and filed it, and now hearing your expert saying that we're not in compliance with FBI, federal, and you said it was state law. There's two. If I can finish, there was two different things that was just said. So I was trying to get understanding of, is it federal, regardless if it's federal or state, like say want to be in compliance, but is it federal that we're not in compliance with, or if we're not in state law that, quote unquote, you said recently passed, that would be good to have that, whatever that recent is?
I'm speculating here, but we can get you the answer, which is that the FBI noticed it, is what the testimony was explained, because it's both federal and state database access, from my understanding. So the FBI noticed it, alerted the Highway Patrol. Highway Patrol then sent a letter that said, this ordinance is needed in order to remain compliant and have access to criminal background check databases. So I'm not sure if it was a state law. I believe it was, but we can certainly get that specificity for you.
Appreciate it. And you're with Highway Patrol, not?
No.
No, I'm not a legal expert. I'm a sergeant on the St. Louis Police Department. So I'm representing my lieutenant. So I will get our legal department to answer your question and make sure
Gotcha. And I appreciate it, but your legal department is saying that we're not in compliance apparently in this.
correct. They worked with the Highway Patrol to get the wording of this bill.
Gotcha. Thank you.
All right. Alderwoman Sonier has an additional question.
Sorry. I guess just kind of in reference of the question, one of the things that I see is it does attempt to clearly define, like there's a use of term kind of controlled substances, which obviously until 2018, the state and the city prosecuted like misdemeanor level offenses, like misdemeanor marijuana level offenses. So that's getting at what Alderman Aldridge said. That's why I think I would say like if there's emails that can be shared, like I'm sure whatever they sent to you all that flagged it would probably be enough to like address probably questions here. I just haven't been a part of any of those conversations. But for example, saying that the use of term of controlled substances, knowing that in the state of Missouri, we've now legalized it, but federally marijuana is still not legal. Just, I think seeing the email would be helpful to give clarification, because I'm curious, like, is cannabis still illegal at the federal level? Would those charges be exempt from like these background checks? And then also on section 4, it says this includes the phrase of force or threat of force. And so I'm wondering, is that tied to the specific state as that's defined, or is that the municipal crime level as that's defined, or do we plan on adding a definition for that phrasing? Sorry, I know I gave you two questions. So my first question was just the controlled substance, and saying like it matters there because obviously substances that are
Still federally legal. Yeah, that would be my assumption too, Alderwoman, of why that's included. But if you do resort, there's a fingerprinting ordinance that part of the Missouri statute is 43535 that requires the city to submit an ordinance draft to the Highway Patrol for approval. Changes to obtain approval from the Highway Patrol. And the most important changes in this ordinance is section 1, which the new draft allows the city to fingerprint employees and contractors, etc., but does not require the city to fingerprint anyone else. So this accomplishes the goals of clearly stating and becoming compliant with 43535 of the Missouri revised statute.
Is your interpretation of this that cannabis will be excluded from background checks?
I'm sorry?
Is your interpretation of this that like cannabis will be excluded from background checks? That's the controlled substance I'm specifically referencing. Most other things are illegal across the board, but I'm just curious. I'm just saying some additional clarifying language might be helpful there because of that discrepancy.
My guess is that it's considered a controlled substance, right? It's still illegal federally, so yes, that's why it's probably flagged in there.
And if I can jump in, just because I have discussed this particular issue at length, there are several testing pools as far as drug tests go, and both armed individuals and individuals that fall under the Department of Transportation testing pool, they have to still, cannabis is still very much something that is tested for with them, even if other city employees and folks in the private sector are not tested. And that's as a result of our risk of losing federal money and federal grant money if we don't comply with that.
I guess I'm just asking, like, because this would apply to all the groups, like interns, I'm sure most of them don't have to be drug tested. Like, I just think some additional clarity could be helpful there, because I know all the groups are not a part of that. But my second question, Alderman Oldenburg, was about the Section 4 force or threat of force. Is that thought to be tied to specific state or municipal crimes?
My guess would be state crimes. Does it not list in there?
Just really vague. So it just might be something just to add some clarifying language. I don't think it would be much. I just don't see anything that clarifies it.
Okay. I guess it could be both, the way it's written here. You're right. I mean, my guess is if it's a state charge, right, it could also be a city ordinance violation too. I mean, so
Yeah.
not sure what the
I just think-
difference is there or why
I
there
think the
distinction.
important language there would be a misdemeanor, which means that it's not an ordinance violation, so it wouldn't be through our municipal, be through
Well,
the
that's a
state.
fair point. That's a fair point. Yep.
Is force or threat of force a state charge, though?
I think the misdemeanor, which involved force or threat of force, would encompass several misdemeanors, your assaults, your battery, things of that nature.
Right, but you see what I'm saying, that the language we're using in the bill of force or force or threat of force is not a state charge. Again, I'm just saying some clarity language I think could be helpful there so that the interpretation is clear while we're, for execution and implementation purposes.
I'm not understanding what clarification you want to make.
Like a clear definition of force or threat of force and what we're referring to, is that connected to specific state or municipal crimes? I think it just might be helpful to walk that out a little bit more in the bill, just to be clear. And I'm not even saying that if we want to include both, whatever is being recommended by the FBI. I'm just saying that putting that clearly in the bill of what we're referencing, I think could be helpful.
All right. That's line 7. Which involves force or threat of force. You want those specific phrases?
Definition.
Or defined?
Mm-hmm. Definitions for those.
I think this is approved language or being approved in concert with the Missouri Highway Patrol. So I know if any changes we make to this is going to have to pass probably their interpretation of the state law to have access to these databases. So I'm a little hesitant to be tinkering too much with the current language.
I'm gonna need your pen.
Alderwoman Velasquez as well.
She's first.
Alderman Velasquez, please proceed.
I don't want to beat a dead horse and just kind of echo, I think, what everybody's been saying here, but Alderman Oldenburg, I think it would be good. I know you mentioned state statute
535.
535, but just having us being clear on what we're in violation of. It sounds like what had happened was the FBI noticed that we were out of compliance, but I think I would need that, and just to double check on. I mean, I do find it ironic that the intern piece coming from the state is interesting. But those would be my two issues with it as written, or as presented.
Anything further, Alderwoman?
Nope.
Thank you. Looks like Alderman Aldridge has more for you.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, I guess since we didn't take up the hearings, we got time today. I also want to echo Alderman Velasquez. I wouldn't feel comfortable voting this out. I know you filed it for a while, Alderman. It sounds like we got, unless it's a deadline that is the expert gone? Is there a deadline of compliance that we have to have this done by the day?
28th.
August. So, okay, plenty of time.
Plenty of time to play games. Absolutely.
Well, that's, I think, how you look at it. But some people like to have information. It's good to see you here today and, see each other yesterday talking about it. I just want answers. I haven't looked at this legislation earlier, and I wasn't sure if it's something that the city already does or if the state already does. Hate you look at it as playing games when people just want information. But so on that state statute, though, doesn't mention interns. It says, when you was just reading it, it didn't mention the language interns, correct? It said like contractors or something outside of that, correct? In that state statute of like fingerprinting, it didn't mention intern.
Boy, I haven't read the state statute in its entirety, so I couldn't tell you on that.
Okay. Well, yep, echo comments. I'm not trying to stand against you. I hate you look that way. I just want to make sure I'm making an informed decision. You know, we've had several hearings on past legislation. They didn't just get voted out the first time. And just because I'm asking for the information, I don't think is a game plan. I would love to get that before I can vote that out today.
Sounds right. All right, then, Mr. Chairman, I think it's probably prudent then to pull the bill at this point for consideration and get answers to these questions. And if we need be, bring back members of the personnel or the legal team from the police department as well, because I certainly want to make sure everyone has an informed decision before we pass this out.
All right, with that, we'll hold it. This seemed pretty routine to me, but we can certainly hold it. I just want to make sure, can you ensure that we line up whoever in the very near future? I don't want to get anywhere close to that August deadline with this. Would they be available to come on that
That
June
14th, 13th, is it 13th or 14th?
13th?
Yeah. Let's assume so. We could
Okay,
sort of
so-
soft circle it in the schedule and
We'll just Groundhog Day this hearing on the 13th and take both of those issues up again and have things where they need to be.
perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you, Alderman. With that, was there any written testimony on this, Madam Clerk?
There were none.
All right. I move that we excuse Alderwoman Keys for necessary absence. It's
So moved.
Second.
been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Alderwoman Keys is excused. And with that, does anyone have any announcements before we adjourn? Go ahead.
I would just announce, making sure folks know we have our public budget meeting this Saturday at 10 a.m. at the International Institute.
All right. Well, with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Hearing no objection, we stand adjourned.